waiting for Janet. I'm sure she'll arrive in any time. In the meantime, let me tell you how grateful I am to be here. I just love visiting this congregation. Just entering this building just gives me such a sense of peace. This beautiful, well-kept sanctuary and the exterior, it's just so lovely. So I'm grateful for that. I love to be here, and I'm a special welcome to those of you who are out in Cyberland. It's just terrific to be in this space. I like renewing my friendship with Herman. We worked together for many years and for a little time in Beverly, and to see my friend Lily Smith up there. I checked out your website and Facebook pages this week. Your congregation seems to be so spirited. It's remarkable how well you have maintained momentum through COVID and a pastoral transition. I can't believe how well things seem to be going in this church. I'm just look at the pages in this bulletin of all the things that are going on. You seem not to have forgotten anybody. It's just amazing how well you have connected with each other and the community. There's something for everyone here, and I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for the ministry you have with children. Well done. Anyway, there's Janet. I'm turning it over to you.
Good morning. My name is Janet Groth. I'm the deacon for the day. With great gratitude, Mary Lumsden is slightly assisting me at last minute. Welcome to First Parish Church Congregational, Manchester, Massachusetts. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome you to our spiritual community's weekly time of remembrance, reflection, and recommitment to God and God's ways, as best expressed for us in the Christian spiritual tradition through the life of Jesus of Nazareth. First Parish Congregation, the congregational part of our name signifying our long-standing tradition within Christianity of democratic governance and the full equality of all members of the spiritual community to participate in its life and work. Which means that I welcome you here this morning, whether you are here in person or watching from elsewhere, to this place where no matter who you are or where you are on your faith, life or faith journey, you are fully and completely welcome. With that, we ask that you welcome our guest minister, Reverend Judy Brain. She's a graduate of Harvard Divinity School, where she was awarded the Billings Prize for preaching. Judy served as a senior minister at Pilgrim United Church of Christ in Lexington for 17 years. She's a resident of Essex since her retirement, and she has continued in ministry as a bridge pastor for churches on the North Shore as well as in the Boston suburbs. In her ministry, a primary focus has been interfaith understanding and social justice. She has worked with many community organizations that promote respect, civility, and peace. She is an enthusiastic gardener, enjoys swimming, kayaking, jigsaw puzzles, and is a convert to Wordle. I'm going to have Bethany come up. She has some announcements for you.
Good morning, me again. There will come a time when you will not hear from me as regularly as you do. So as I mentioned last Sunday, a Soup and Conversation is scheduled for next Sunday, October 23rd. We look forward to spending time together, engaging in a preliminary thought exercise on the skills and characteristics that we envision in our next settled pastor and the role that we hope they will play in our church community. As food for thought, we've inserted a copy of the categories of pastoring that we'd like to start talking about. These are in your bulletin, or some are out in the narthex for choir people. The categories of pastoring, namely, are Sunday worship, pastoral care, leadership style, and community engagement. This will indeed be a preliminary discussion, one that will lay the groundwork for our interim pastor and transition/search committee. So please noodle this over during the week and plan to attend to add your voice to this creative, hopeful, and important exercise. If you're unable to attend, please feel free to pass your thoughts on to me or any member of church council, and we will be sure that your voice is heard. And of course, along with food for thought, we also need food for our bellies. So we will be sending around a sign-up genius, or if anyone wants to shoot me an email letting me know what you might want to contribute. And the interim search committee is hopeful to be able to share news midweek. So don't let up on the prayers, but we're this close. Yay! Thank you all.
So with that, we'll have our opening hymn, When Morning Gilds the Skies, New Church Hymnal number 86. Please be seated. We'll now do the call to worship. Let us rejoice, for morning has dawned. A new day has been born, and we are newly alive to enjoy it. And the wonder of the human family. We gather to worship God, to share prayers and gifts, to pledge ourselves to God's work in the world. May God strengthen us so that what we do in the days to come might be honest, sacred, and filled with hope.
wants us to grow in our body, in our minds, and in our spirits. He wants us to grow in our joy. So today's message is brought to you by these. The next time you see thee, remember, God says, grow in joy. That's it for me.
first prayers might be one of gratitude for such a robust choir. Aren't you lucky? So I am grateful that Janet has agreed to help me with the concerns of today, and she's going to go around and gather up our prayer intentions.
bringing them with me when I head out right now for a play date with my great nieces to let my niece and her husband have a little bit of quiet time together. Thank you all for your support in that. It's a hard life now.
Yes.
I'd like prayers for Paul's aunt, Vi, who is 96 years old and lived a great life, and she's in end stages of cancer. And we went to see her this week, and she was very happy to see us. And she's one of those people who's just a happy person to the end. So prayers for her as she finds her peace. She has great, great faith in God.
I'm going to just proclaim from the balcony. We have a tremendous joy in our family. My niece, Catherine, who's been a guest here, she lives in Montana, and of course she's my mom's granddaughter. She and her husband are expecting. They're expecting in the wake of her husband's illness last year that endangered their ability to have a family. Yet, we have a baby coming. So we are overjoyed. Catherine and Corin.
Hallelujah!
I'm hearing from more and more people that the more we open up out of COVID into our lives, the more overwhelmed people are feeling. So prayers for those of us, myself included, who are feeling overwhelmed and can't quite find the balance yet.
Just prayers and fellowship for Loomis, who's a member here. She had a little bike accident in Montana. She fell and her daughter. She ended up with 25 stitches in her leg and one or two broken fingers. The good news is she's on her way home. So, fellowship for Loomis.
Continued prayers for Johnny and Fred Jackson, for whom we pray that over peace and money.
Any others? And thank you, Janet. Let us go to prayer. Holy One, Creator, Life Giver, we respond to what autumn brings, colors that take the breath away, sky that achieves a blue beyond blue, smells that tell us a cycle of growth is ending here in New England. The earth rests for a while. We are grateful for this gift of beauty, both seen and felt. May we cherish this beautiful earth, respect it, and live in peace and harmony with all that is. But harmony is often elusive. When our bodies betray us, when conflict makes enemies, when loss hurts so much. Pain, both physical and emotional, can leave our hearts cold. We tend to be overwhelmed by the sorrow, cruelty, and suffering that permeate the news. We long for the sacred love that finds a way. We pray for all the cares and joys brought before our congregation today. Visit all who are in need with your healing presence. We reach also beyond our own circle to the great needs of the world. Our hearts ache for the people of Ukraine, so many innocent victims, so many brave soldiers, too much carnage. For every option there is to stop this madness, we pray, O God. We hold in our hearts the families of victims of school shootings, especially Parkland and Sandy Hook. This week's events brought all the horror back, even though there were steps toward justice. And yet we hear another in Raleigh, North Carolina. May we not lose heart in the face of all these burdens. Help us to recognize the hope that you hold out to us each day. The glory of nature, the kindness of a friend, the enthusiasm of children. May we know your presence with us as we silently consecrate each moment of each day to you. In solidarity with those who suffer, we pray Jesus' prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Our offerings are a way of making the world our neighborhood. Our money can go where we cannot go. Through our gifts, we support the church and its efforts beyond our doors. Through these gifts, we reach out to those beyond our touch. May our offerings have wings. They will now be received. Will you please join me in the prayer of dedication printed in your bulletin? What we have, we bring to you, O God, the work of our hands, the love of our hearts, our good intentions, our failed purposes, our jobs, and our relationships. Take them to your own heart and make them holy. Amen.
The reading today is from Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep you going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore.
I think Jesus had a wonderful sense of humor. The story from the gospel, I think, is illustrative of that. It's the parable of the unjust judge and the widow. I wish we had videotapes of his storytelling. One preacher suggests that he might have told this story in different voices, one for the gruff old judge and another one for that very feisty little old lady. Anyway, I'm reading the story from Eugene Peterson's version, The Message. The story of the persistent widow. Jesus told them a story showing that it was necessary for them to pray consistently and never quit. He said, there once was a judge in some city who never gave God a thought and cared nothing for people. A widow in that city kept after him. My rights are being violated. Protect me. He never gave her the time of day. But after this went on and on, he said to himself, I care nothing for what God thinks and even less for what people think. But because this widow won't quit badgering me, I'd better do something to see that she gets justice. Otherwise, I'm going to end up beaten black and blue by her pounding. Then the master said, do you hear what that judge, corrupt as he is saying? So what makes you think that God won't step in and work justice for his chosen people who continue to cry out for help? Won't he stick up for them? I assure you, God will. God will not drag his feet. But how much of that kind of persistent faith will the Son of Man find on earth when he returns? Here ends the reading of the gospel story. Jesus' listeners would have been shocked by this story. His hero is one of the least powerful people imaginable, the ultimate underdog. First of all, women in his culture had no authority, and widows even less so, because they had no man to speak for them or take their part. They were not allowed to speak to strangers. They were not allowed to be out in public alone. And this wasn't a society where everybody got their day in court. This widow, with no social standing, could never officially enter a courtroom. So all of this conversation with the judge, all these encounters, they had to be held in the street. So she shows up. She shows up to yell at him as he exits the chariot to enter the court. She stalks him. This is the only device she has, that persistence. Well, and chutzpah. She is feisty. When the judge complains that she will wear him out, the Greek word that's used in this translation is a boxing term, which means repeatedly hit your opponent under the eye until you knock them unconscious. So by sheer obstinacy, she gets her way. So with this funny story, Jesus has our attention. What's his point? Are we supposed to nag God till we get what we want? I don't think so. But perhaps it's about a tireless commitment to justice, about never giving up. This determined widow inspired my internet clergy group to come up with parables. A couple of ministers in Canada compared her to the raging grannies. Now, that is a group of elderly women who are social activists in Canada. They dress in stereotypical granny outfits, flowered hats, spectacles, sensible shoes, big vinyl pocketbooks. And then they organize rallies and demonstrations against nuclear proliferation, human rights violations. You never know where the grannies are going to show up. They are persistent and they are pervasive. They're also a little threatening to the powers. They are actually on the dangerous organizations list of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Dozens of other pastors share their ideas about pursuing justice with ceaseless determination. That's my instinct too. I've preached on that, I don't know how many times this comes up in the lectionary cycle, but I've preached on this text plenty of times, and that's pretty much where I go. That's what I preach about, that pursuing of justice without letting up. But, I don't think I've read the test very carefully, because that's not actually where Jesus goes with this. He says, I have some good news for you. When you pray, your requests are not coming before some corrupt, cranky old judge who cares neither for you or for God. You can be as powerless as a destitute old widow, but when you pray, I solemnly promise you, you will always be heard. He says, this is about our need to pray always, about our need not to lose heart. And honestly, after the last few years and the current news cycle, I find this pretty relevant. I don't know about you, but I'm surely a candidate for losing heart. The context of this story is Jesus' conversation with his followers about the kingdom of God. that beautiful realm of love and justice they so looked forward to. Jesus, when is it coming? They're impatient. They've waited so long, dodging the whips of the Roman soldiers, working for a little pay to keep their children fed, waiting and looking to their religious leaders for hope. When is it coming? Jesus believes that great day will come, and he also tells them that glimmers of it is already here, among and within you. He gets it. They're weary with the conflict. They see sorrow and despair all around. They feel ill-served by corrupt rulers, and they see no end to it. I can relate. One of our prayer requests this morning was for exactly this. Jesus is not giving a sermon like the ones I tend to preach about how to work harder, do more, constantly strive to right every wrong. No, it's about going to God with it. Going to God with it over and over. That's the persistence. It's an encouraging sermon about not losing heart. Have you ever been there? Did you say with that poor widow, I've exhausted my resources. I don't know where to turn. Jesus himself persisted in prayer when all seemed hopeless. Perhaps the most heartbreaking example of this is his prayer in Gethsemane, where he begged God to be spared his excruciating death. He too was at the end of his emotional tether, fearful of what was to come. He says it himself. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Then he goes off by himself, leaving his disciples to keep watch, and falling with his face to the ground, he prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. In all of our Bibles, that's one short phrase. May this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. But I imagine that there was a long night of anguish and tears and resistance between let this cup pass from me and the final surrender. Not as I will, but as you will. Jesus tells us to go to God when we've done all we could, when things don't look very hopeful, when we seem powerless to change things. And we know from the way the story goes on, God does not miraculously fix everything. But we also know, we know those stories, the band of his disciples and the saints who continued to walk in his ways in the centuries to follow. They found the courage, the strength, and the heart to carry on in spite of adversity. During the Montgomery bus boycott, Dr. Martin Luther King's phone rang and a voice on the line breathed a threat to bomb his house. Of course, his children and his wife were all there. He wrote about that time. I discovered then that religion had to become real to me, and I had to know God for myself. I will never forget it. I prayed a prayer. I prayed out loud that night, and I said, Lord, I'm down here trying to do what's right. I think I'm right. I think the cause that we represent is right, but Lord, I must confess, I am weak now. I'm faltering. I'm losing my courage. I can't let the people see me like this, because if they see me weak and losing my courage, they will begin to get weak. And it seemed at that moment that I could hear an inner voice saying to me, Martin Luther, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for justice. Stand up for truth. And lo, I will be with you, even until the end of the world. Almost at once, my fears began to go. My uncertainty disappeared. I don't think there's a single saint, ancient and modern, who has not recorded times when they have been weary and discouraged and filled with doubt and fearful. The phrase, the dark night of the soul, that was coined by a saint. Jesus recognized that there would be times we would lose heart. He reminds us that that's when we need to rely on something greater than ourselves. Give it to God. To persist in prayer. Shall we start now? Let us pray. Faithful, loving God, we're praying for ourselves today. We ask that you would hear our petitions. In this silence, we name our needs, yield ourselves to your Spirit. May our cups be filled. Amen.
One faith, one hope, one Lord, one church for which He died, one voice, one song, we lift in praise to Him who was and is and shall be There is one body, one spirit, as you were called to one hope, one Lord, baptism and faith.
friend we have in Jesus, and that's number 506 in the New Century Hymnal. And now go in peace, for peace is the gift of God. Go in love, for love endures forever. And go in confidence, for you cannot go where God is not. Amen.